can generate magnetic fields with low voltage and high current. That's the way electromagnets work. And Joe Newman, a very famous figure in the free energy magnetic motor field, has had battles with the US Patent Office because they say, well, your motor violates all the conventionally accepted laws of physics. It's impossible. We won't give you a patent. But I first saw his work featured in 1982, 30 years ago, on the CBS Evening News in the United States with Dan Rather. And uses a very long coil with lots and lots of turns. So by the time the pulse comes in, it's going at the speed of light. You can draw free energy from a rotor inside. There's the magnetic field configuration of the coil. Conventional magnetic field. There's a driving battery. Current moves at the speed of light, but the coil is extremely long. And there's the chemical makeup of the ions you can get in the battery. Very interesting magnetic motor. There's Joe Newman. Howard Johnson. Howard Johnson got a patent in 1979 for his magnetic motor. There he is. He died recently, 1919 to 2008. Unsung pioneer, but his work was featured in Popular Mechanics. There's his rotor and stator arrangement. There's an amazing magnetic motor by unsung pioneer Howard Johnson. You have the engine stand, low friction ball bearing, there's the stator shaft, there's the rotor, and we have a V-belt around the motor going to a conventional generator. So with this configuration and these special curved conventional magnets, you can get all the free energy you want. No fuel input needed. As we know, magnets are gate pumps for cosmic energy or ether, which is inexhaustible. And here's Johnson's helical wave. Everything in nature is based on helixes and rotating fields. The way air and water, fluids, want to move through the universe is through a cyclical rotation or vortex. It's computer animation. And we have toroidal fields, which are basically the same thing. You find this in nature all the time. I highly recommend a book by, Ilya Prigogine, Order Out of Chaos, 1984, Bantam Books. It talks about how nature exhibits signs of systematized self-organization. And usually the way nature exhibits systematized self-organization is by forming a vortex. You find it everywhere in nature. Hurricanes, tornadoes, there's the Fibonacci spiral. It's a spiral of constantly changing curvature. Ether flux in through the conductor, ether flux out, and the reverse polarity on the other side, reverse direction. And you see this everywhere in nature. There's the treble clef. I'm a musician also. I play and teach guitar, keyboards, bass, and cello. The treble clef, there's the spiral, there. There's the bass clef, or F clef, there's F on the second line there. 9-octave cycle, constantly changing curvature. There's Victor Schauberger's from Austria, his work, and his repulsine anti-gravity craft. Now, in the absence of air or water, you have ether, or vacuum. Pure vacuum is energy beyond our wildest dreams. There's a whirlpool, tornado about to form, storm, hurricane is viewed from space, and a spiral galaxy, just like our own Milky Way galaxy. Everything from the micro to the macro wants to form in that way. There's the thunderstorm, here's the tornado. So Victor Schauberger designed a tornado power generator and a flying machine. Remember, tornadoes can lift anything. 100 tons, 200-ton locomotives are easily lofted into the sky. What happens is there's a zone of anti-gravity at the proboscis of the tornado vortex. Very interesting. Highly recommend everyone study vortex mechanics. So vortex-based mathematics, highly recommend. Find it everywhere in nature. It's how light wants to move in a vacuum. So we figure if light is made up of quanta, or particles called photons, there must be, at a sub-microscopic level, a corkscrew shape on the leading edge of the photon that causes it to corkscrew its way through the vacuum. And in a scope, it would look like a sine wave. DNA, so we're made up of, our cells at the most basic level. So the fingerprint of God, because our fingerprints want to form that way too. The photon model, again, this is very important for understanding what's going on. This is like a toroidal vortex in a magnetic field. This is what's happening. And we also have a unification coil developed by Daniel and Erica Nunez of OneStopEnergies.com. Sorry, OneStopEnergies.com. Highly recommend you look at that online. The path of least resistance is the path of the vortex. So you're not expending energy, the vortex does it for you. Look at the vortex. There's the coil. Highly recommend you go to the website, OneStopEnergies.com, and look at how that's constructed. Now, it's not a normal coil. Now, normally, magnetic fields, all fields in nature, electrical, magnetic, and gravitational, obey the inverse square law. In other words, the intensity of the field drops off inversely with the square of the distance. But this doesn't happen in this coil. Go out of the room, still have a pretty good field there, pretty good flux. 17 feet from the toroidal source. Look at the needle deflecting still. That's not normal. Something's going on there. Now, electrodynamics and craft construction. With magnetic motors and toroidal vortices, we can construct craft that are not dependent on aerodynamics for lift and propulsion. And therefore, they have many, many advantages over conventional aerospace craft. Now, this craft, it looks like your typical flying saucer or UFO. Form follows function. If you want to have a craft that will utilize force fields, which are really gravitational fields, though all fields are unified and reciprocal and interchangeable in nature, this shape works the best. June 11th, 2002, U.S. patent number 6404089, electrodynamic field generator, issued to Mark Tomian, who died recently, of Star Drive Engineering. This craft swims in a sea of electrons, while vacuum, according to A.P. Dirac and others, Walter Russell will confirm this, is nothing more than pre-electrons. Think of vacuum as pre-electrons, a sea of potential electrons, trillions upon trillions of electrons. The configuration of the craft is negative at the rim, positive at the hub. So you get an interchange of forces just like this, a toroidal vortex that again we see in electromagnetism and coils. So the craft swims in a sea of electrons, which is a vacuum. And there it goes, swimming around. Yeah, my staff did a really great job on this PowerPoint. Kudos to them, Mr. Sam Mason, Kevin Balmer. You guys are great. There's Tomian's electrodynamic field generator. Here's the craft, you got a patent for it. So negative at the rim, positive at the hub. That is the configuration of electrodynamic vehicles. Look at the work by Victor Schauberger. Look at the work by, oh gosh, many others. Marcel Page. And there's the parts from a patent, pretty complex. There's from the model, so positive at the innermost ring, negative at the periphery. And he studied Professor Searle's craft and Professor Searle's work and said, this is very interesting, I'm going to do this. Now this configuration, this craft produces a great deal of heat Conversely, Professor Searle's apparatus produces cold, intense cold, numbing cold. And there's a vacuum envelope around the craft, because no air can come near the craft at these voltages. So 700 volts DC to 660 volts AC power inverter, 288 total required. So it's a 20-foot dynamo. The craft is an electrodynamic generator. There's a coil configuration, primary and secondary. It has a primary heat exchanger of liquid sodium. Simplified power plant design for a 256 megawatt electrodynamic field generator. Net output 240 megawatts at 94% efficiency. That's pretty darn good. At 132,000 volts AC, alternating current. See the polyphase current. There's a mock-up, a working version of the generator. And Tomion's group is working with us at Searle Aerospace. That's just started recently to try to get this technology out into people's hands today. Not tomorrow, today. It's all here right now. Rest in peace. God bless you, Mark. 1957 to 2009. He was only 4 years older than myself. There's American Anti-Gravity's logo. Been working and friends with Mr. Tim Ventura for several years. Now, according to a recent American Anti-Gravity interview with Mark Tomion, John's work, this Professor John Searle's work, was indispensable when it came to the hull configuration. I studied John's work for many years. Mark Tomion's patented functional star drive generator, and this is a warp drive generator, no inertia, relies on vacuum electronics to create a dual hemi-toroidal electrostatic discharge, there's that toroidal field again, through electronic means. And the Searle effect generator accomplishes its electrogravitic propulsion through permanent magnetics, Searle magnetics. And I'm here representing Searle Technologies Incorporated, our parent company in California. And there's the proud logo of Searle Technologies, the swallow. Seek with all learning, love overrules war. Swallow, swallow command. And that's my specialty, the inverse gravity vehicle or flying disc. And that's me. A couple of years ago, talking to my boss, Professor Searle, who's over in England right now, working very hard to make sure we can have this technology yesterday and today. And he built this technology, 41 flying craft, many SEG magnetic generators, and it works. Now, it's based on this ancient numerical system, which came to Professor Searle in a series of 2 dreams when he was a young boy from age 4 to age 10. And it's a very ancient numerical system based on 2 squared. Well, 2 squared is 4. Now, you know magic squares. If you have numbers sequential, you get all different outputs from the horizontals, the verticals, and the diagonals. But if you randomize the numbers, just like the random energy of the ether or vacuums going all over the place, randomize them, and the outputs from the horizontals and verticals are all the same, coherent. You're cohering the zero-point energy. So what these squares are is a mathematical relationship, a representation of the complex switching and exchange patterns of matter and energy. Very important to understanding really what's going on with this technology and tangential technologies. There's that light wave photon symbol again, what's going on. In a coil and in the SEG drive and star drive, you have vortex of energy in, vortex of vacuum or space energy in one way and in reverse direction out the other. You can also have cubes. Not just squares, cubes. Now this is very important to understand what's going on. There are 3 and only 3 groups of squares, switching patterns. Group 1. Group 1 square rotates. All odd numbers numbers belong to this group. So that's half of all numbers are group 1 class.